In part one of the Inos Caravan review, we dealt with some facts and figures, the construction of the caravan, and also a review of the exterior. In this part two, we'll look at the interior and then have some conclusions at the end. Of course, to access other than the lounge, that is to get to the bedroom and the washroom, we need to open the slide out. So here we are. The response of most people, and that included us when walking on board the Inos for the first time, is wow. And that wow is in response to the sheer amount of space, which is very hard to take in at first and certainly does not show up on the camera. Anyway, big picture stuff first. There are two overall wood themes available, at least there were when we ordered ours. The most commonly chosen, and the one which you'll see on the demonstrator, is the light oak finish. And the light oak finish will also live up to that name, as the interior of the caravan will be brighter. If you bear in mind the Inos doesn't have a giant panoramic roof window, which of course means it also doesn't have cracks, warps or leaks as a result of this, is going to make it darker on the inside, and also the very dark tint on the windows, great for privacy but not great for letting in vast amounts of daylight. So the light oak, which is the most popular finish, is going to give you more brightness in the interior. The other finish, which is this one, which is a sort of a walnut finish, we chose this because of our strange tastes, and we rather like the idea of the dark decadence it gives. As well as choosing the overall wood theme colours, you can make certain choices regarding which cupboards are which colour and so on and so forth. There is a wide range of different fabrics available for the upholstery, including a leather option. Again, the demonstrator we saw had leather option. Personally, we actually preferred the cloth version, and because there are so many to choose from, you can pick exactly what you want for yourselves. There are also a couple of choices for the vinyl flooring. There aren't any carpets available as an option, which at first we were surprised by, but having lived with the Inos now for the first season, we don't really miss the carpets, so that is no longer a big deal for us. Before we go into any further detail, just want to point out one more thing, is that from the factory, the window surrounds look like this, which wasn't to our taste. So basically everything between here and here as we go round is being trimmed by myself. So this is not standard or available as an option. Starting with the main entrance door, as I've said before, you now get a lippet door which is different to this. The grey panel on this door is unique to us, but the door will be different. I'm not sure if a bin is available for the lippet door. You have to ask the factory that one. Below the door we've got this large doormat. The factory supply the normal small inserted type which you'll see on most caravans. This is a larger one which I put in because it also covers the access hatch to our grey water tank if I want to clean it out. While we're down here, this is the door to what would be the shoe locker. It looks pretty much the same as standard. The standard one drops down. I've changed mine into a hinge one so I can do this. And this is actually a pretty good size and usefully spaced shoe locker. You can also see here the E&P leveling control panel, and to some degree this can be moved to a position which suits you. Going to the top of the door, this is the BCA main control panel, which integrates reasonably well with the Inos systems. From here you'd control the water pumps, the water tank filling, though of course there are levers to work at the back as well for this, things such as the awning light, etc. You'd normally get two more switches up on this panel, which one is for the main lights inside here and one is for the kitchen lights. I've added some extras, as in for my water control panel and display panel, but also a very accurate ammeter measuring what current we're using on the electric hookup. We also paid to have the Alder control moved here. It normally sits in the bedroom. We paid to have it moved here and also paid to have an extra thermostat in the back as well. Okay, moving further forward, we have the first overhead locker. This is a very shallow locker, but immediately you can see the quality of the hinges used. These are basically kitchen hinges, which means they're designed to be used day in, day out with pretty heavy MDF doors. So in here, they're going to last an awful long time, and that bit of quality really does show. Also, the solidity of all the woodwork is very impressive. Here you can actually see the control for the slide out, and also because we went for electric awning, the switch for that. You can see here the separate remote for the air conditioning, and also a remote for the RGB mood lighting, which is an optional extra. The Inos is the German car of the caravan world, is that you pay a premium for the brand and then you find yourself spending lots and lots of money on optional extras. The other switches and control boxes are more to do with my own extra systems, so we'll ignore those for now. While we're here, I'll also point out that as well as the trim panels around the windows and on the walls, I have added some extra lighting, downlights and adjustable lights at the front, which aren't standard. Okay, round to the front. These two front lockers are frankly enormous and are incredibly useful. The amount of space in here is actually hard to overestimate. Really, really useful space. Again, all the soft close, good quality hinges. Below these is something which is really quite fancy, and this is where you have your sort of show-off piece of your little drinks cabinet. The factory will cut the foam to suit your own requirements, and that is, yes, a nice touch. In these rather neat corner shelf units, you can specify different levels of complexity in terms of sockets, plugs, USBs. You tell them what you want and they will fit it for you, obviously at a price. All around here you can see the vents from the heating system, because the heating system is extremely good. Radiators absolutely everywhere, including underfloor heating, so you're not going to get cold in the Inos. Also, obviously, these reading lights are standard. Onto the other side, of course, again, you have the corner shelving we've added extra sockets to these as well. Really nice magazine rack, very useful for things. We make a lot of use of this. In fact, normally our Inos manuals stay in here. The shelving here, I suppose, is really more for show than anything else. It's effectively, it's sort of the edge of the slide out, but it gives a bit of a box section, gives a bit of strength, and it's not unattractive. We do quite like this. Into the slide out itself, as you can see, we have overhead cupboards. These are normally sliding cupboards, but we again paid to have them made slightly differently for us. And obviously around the windows is normally relatively plain. I've changed that, and as we move further around we get to my TV mounting. They will mount a TV on the side of the fridge wall here, but it would be a conventional mounting. I've made my own, which is very, very strong and also hides behind it my subwoofer and my sound system. Below here we have the two-seater sofa. You can go for a three-seater and do without the cupboard, and that is a no-cost option. And below, yes, this is more and more of the radiators, so there are radiators absolutely everywhere. And yes, that includes in the slide out. Pretty impressive. Because of the very clever design of the layout of the interior of the Caravan and the particularly impressive design of the slide out, people coming into this Caravan often ask what this piece of wood here is. What's this box? Well, of course, it's actually the wheel box. That's where the wheels are, because of course this is the edge of the normal Caravan. Anyway, above this we have obviously the space for the fridge. You can choose either between a compressor fridge or the normal three-way fridge. We've gone compressor fridge. In terms of performance and size, it beats the the normal fridge hands down. The only downside is, well, actually there are two of them. One is you can hear it at night making a quiet noise, and number two is you're going to go off grid. You might struggle because of course you can't run this on gas. Beside here we've got the storage for the main table, and this rather nicely slides out, which makes getting the table out, it's a bit of a knack, but when you're used to it, it's actually very easy, and is a very handy place to have this. And so round to the kitchen, and this really is a very good size. Many of you actually use the lift up flap across the doorway. Yes, you block the doorway, but that makes it a very large area indeed, and is very useful. The equipment is fairly standard. You have the usual oven. The hob ours features the induction option, and that is definitely worth having because cooking with induction is brilliant, unless of course you want to go off grid, but you do have still the two gas rings. Not so brilliant is the microwave installation, because we do find, or rather we did find, hot wet fumes would collect in the food cupboards up here. So I have actually added my own automatic ventilator fan which comes on with the microwave, which does solve that. The background here, the splashback, I believe is a cost option. The one saving grace of this being a cost option is you can pick pretty much any colour you like, and us being really flamboyant souls, we chose this really exciting grey colour. All the cupboards are soft closed with good quality hinges, and the drawers below the hob are exceptionally large, sturdy, and work beautifully. So these are actually very impressive. Last things to mention in this section. First of all, we also paid, I think at the time it was about £350, I can't remember precisely, for the optional footstool, but it also does come with a nice little tabletop which makes it into a coffee table. And again, it's testament to the amount of space in that we actually have room for a coffee table in the lounge of our Caravan. Looking up, we've got obviously a fairly standard size roof light, and you can here see the air conditioning unit. This is the Aventa Comfort. It's the larger one, which will both heat and cool. This obviously is a cost option. It does work in tandem with the Alder controls, which will give you full climate control. I also managed to get hold of one of the last of the Truma iNet systems, which means we can control this remotely from our phone. I will mention while we're in this section a couple of quality control issues we had with the Caravan as it was delivered. Some of the kitchen cupboard doors were chipped. There was a nasty ridge in the floor. Not super huge, but I don't expect to have a ridge in the floor of my Caravan. But again, to be fair to the company, is they did take the Caravan back and did correct these issues. One other issue for us was we went for the solid dividing door to the bedroom. This isn't normally an option anymore. It was on some older Caravans and could well now no longer be an option. It does present some problems because of course it goes against the slide out, which of course in itself moves around. But it did throw up one issue, and that is because of course these Caravans are largely hand built, and you will get some interesting tolerances. For example, when it comes to the floor being parallel to the roof, this picture shows, well, they weren't. You don't normally see this. It doesn't affect its strength or structure, but with this type of door, it did throw up some issues, but that is now being resolved to our satisfaction. The normal door between the main part of the Caravan and the bedroom is a concertina type door, which does actually weigh a lot less and also takes up less space. You might be wondering why there's a cutout at the top of the door here. That was my specification. It means when the door is shut, we still get the cool air blowing through from the air conditioning unit. Into the bedroom. Bedroom features a full-size transverse bed, and it stays this size all the time. There's no nighttime, daytime positioning. You can get round the bed perfectly fine, so this is the way it stays, which is the way we like it. Also, what we like particularly is that quite often with beds in caravans, fixed beds in caravans especially, is because of space limitations, you are somewhat hemmed in at the pillow area. But here we actually have a little space each side, and on the left hand side, lift up flap, little shelf, USB pointing reading light, and also their own little cupboard. On the right hand side you don't get the cupboard, but you still get the little shelf and the lift up flap. Above the bed we've got more overhead lockers, and again I've opted to have these as lift up rather than the sliding doors which are standard. This obviously is the bathroom wall as I slide round. Here we have basically the light switches which are for the bedroom and one for the bathroom, and here is a separate thermostat for the heating system. This is where the Alder control panel normally sits in the standard Caravan. The colour of the grey perspex here is because that's the theme we went for. Again, depending on the colour you pick in the kitchen, this colour can be changed to suit your own tastes. If we open the wardrobe, you'll see just how enormous it really is. It's wide and deep, and this is by far the largest wardrobe we've seen pretty much in any Caravan. You also have on the side here some useful shelves. The grey boxes I'll come to in a minute or two. Also, this is where you can see where the aerial is mounted. You do get an aerial amplifier. We opted to have one with a built-in meter, and this is my own switch which allows me to switch between the aerial and, for example, an on-site bollard or similar. Below the hanging part of the wardrobe, two nice big drawers, again very useful. Beneath here is actually where you find the battery boxes, so nothing else here on the inside of the Caravan. Move to the other side, just close the wardrobe door. And here we have something which my wife got very excited about. That is a full-size dressing table. This is something which you just do not normally get. Brilliant to use, nice and wide, nice and deep, nice and strong. The side here we have also a useful storage bin, and obviously you've got a 240 volt socket for hair dryers and the like. If I look up, we've got more storage. Now in our case we've got rid of one of the storage sides of this cupboard for our TV mount. I've mounted mine in here. This isn't a factory option, I've done this, but having said that, the factory normally mounts the bedroom TV on this side wall, which is not perfect on a sort of a swinging bracket. I think they might look at what I've done here, and you might find that being adopted at some point. You might also be thinking, well, why give up a cupboard? Well, you've got so much storage in the Inos, you're not going to miss it, really. Beneath the dressing table, you've got more good-sized drawers, and beneath these, this is where you have most of the fuses, the power distribution unit, the control panel for the solar panels, etc., etc. A couple more points in here is if we look up, it's a fairly normal roof light. And if we look down, the bed does lift up. There is some storage at the end of the bed, the foot of the bed. This is where the factory cushion to make up the full-size front bed goes. The middle of the bed is where you have the Alder heating, and also in this case the Alder flow for continuous hot water. And at the head of the bed beneath there, well, that is just open air. Quality control issues in the bedroom have been mainly, I think, two things. Firstly, a couple of missing screws meant that the board behind the bed head initially was very rattly, so I've put a new screw in that to fix it. And also there appeared to be one or two screws missing from the surround of the roof light, because the surround nearly came down on one trip. But again, having put all the screws into the holes that were already there, it now feels perfectly solid. There had been the odd bit of edging trim which comes loose, but that can happen in any situation. The other thing which has happened in the bedroom is the door actually to the washroom. This again is a result of the way the Caravan has been somewhat hand built, which means that the door just did not sit squarely in the frame and looked really quite wonky. That's my technical term for today, wonky. Again, the factory have taken that on board and have remade the door to fit. So at the end of the day, everything's been put right and they've not argued about any of it. So we've got there in the end. And last but not least, we come into the washroom. At first glance, the washroom looks really quite compact because, of course, there's no slide out in here. But having used it now for some time, we've found it to be perfectly adequate in terms of its size and have had no issues whatsoever. What isn't compact is the shower. It's an extremely well proportioned shower. It benefits from a very solid shower tray. I don't like Caravan showers when you walk on the shower tray it moves and creaks and you're frightened it's going to crack. This is a really good solid shower tray which certainly will not crack. Also benefits from a nice bifold glass shower door. Glass is heavy, but again that's one of those things, the benefits of having a generous weight allowance. We opted to have a thermostatically controlled mixer valve, and I've also added in here my own extractor fan. From experience, we've always found that a fan actually in the shower cubicle does mean it dries out much more quickly. The reason it's in the side wall is it goes through to those grey boxes you saw earlier in the wardrobe, and in here I've built some anti-backdraft device which prevents cold air coming down through the roof and into the shower cubicle if the fan isn't running. And very nearly forgot this, but there is an omnivent fan in the roof light of the washroom, so ventilation in the washroom certainly will not be a problem. The shower's been the only place really in the washroom we've had any issues. There was a leak from around the shower door frame when we first got the Caravan, and a little bit more worryingly, after a few uses, one of the joints down beside where the shower rail is and the mixer valve is, that joint is quite thin sealant, and the sealant did pull away from the joint but with the movement of the Caravan. Having said that though, is the factory have worked with me and we've come up with a fix which they've now applied, which should solve this once and for all. So credit to the factory, they've listened, they've responded, they've done everything I've possibly asked them to do, which is more than I've had with some companies in the past. Moving into the rest of the washroom, the basin looks quite small, but the shape works really quite well, especially as the well-built mixer tap can be swiveled out of the way. Nice large mirror and some useful shelves on the left-hand side. If you opt to have the shaver socket, that normally sits here. We have got a shaver socket, but ours is actually inside the cupboard because it's only really used for charging things rather than direct shaving. The cupboards beneath are really well proportioned again, and something in here which you do not normally see in a touring caravan, and that's a proper trap on the basin. There's one here and also one on the kitchen sink, and this does prevent smells from getting into the Caravan. Another thing, of course, these are fixed throughout to 32mm rigid pipework, so grey water draining throughout again is not a problem at all. Further along we have more cupboards. The toilet roll sits in here and comes out through a little slot, which is a nice little touch, and further into the corner we have the tall cupboard here which houses the Alder expansion tank. The other controls and switches in here are all for my own additions, so I'll ignore those for now. As standard in the Inos, as well as a radiator beneath the sink, you get a plumbed in towel radiator. Personally, we prefer an electric towel radiator, so we have fitted our own larger electric towel radiator, and the backing of it, that leatherette finish on an insulated panel, is something you don't normally get. The standard towel radiator looks a bit like this. Lastly, we go on to the toilet. Standard Thetford toilet. This one does not feature a built-in reservoir. It takes its flush water directly from the Caravan's water system. Pluses and minuses for this, that's the way it is in the Inos. The only thing we found is that the flush pressure wasn't always quite what we'd like. I've added an extra inline pump to make this a bit more potent, but that's because we're super fussy. I imagine for most people this flush will be perfectly adequate. And I think that's just about it. In this section, I'll cover my conclusions about the Inos Caravan. At this point, I should make it clear that these are my own views, and obviously you are welcome to disagree with any or all of them. As a caravan manufacturer, the Fifth Wheel Company is, by any account, a very small company. I'm not saying it isn't successful. It's been producing the Inos for over 10 years, and each one taking approximately 2 months to build, 2 side by side, giving a production run of about 12 per year. They're always going to be a rare sight. The problem of being a small company is you just don't have the economies of scale, which means you will not get custom produced panoramic roof windows, custom produced bits of trim, or custom produced front or rear panels, lights, etc., etc. It's just not possible for a small company. So in some ways, the Inos doesn't look as fancy as many of the main manufacturers' caravans. That's at first glance, at least. So what is the Inos's USP? What is its unique selling point? What you do get is an unrivaled sense of space and solidity. It's extremely hard to express this or quantify it. You really need to be inside an Inos caravan to appreciate just how much extra space and just how solid it actually feels. This just does not come across in any kind of video or photograph. Being a small company with no dealers, you buy direct from the factory, and the buying experience of an Inos is unlike all other caravans because every caravan is made to order and every caravan is made for the customer. So everyone is also unique. So it's a much more inclusive experience. It's very much tailor-made as opposed to off the peg. And obviously this is a very good thing, but obviously you pay for it. Now I confess I'm quite a particular individual and I knew exactly what we wanted from our caravan. And so I got to know the team at the factory really quite well. But to be fair, they were very happy to work with me, and actually it was a very good working relationship to get exactly what we wanted. This kind of attention to detail and personal service you're not going to get from any other type of caravan manufacturer. So in this respect, it's very difficult to compare the Inos to other caravans because it is just so different. A completely different market sector, a completely different build and construction, and a completely different internal layout because of that slide out. However, there is no escaping the fact that the Inos costs approximately £30,000 more than the second most expensive UK built caravan. That price difference is staggering. The question is it worth it? So, does spending motorhome money on a caravan get you perfection? Well, no. In this life, very few things are perfect, and our Inos was no exception. I think it's fair to say that when it comes to quality control, the factory did let us down, and they have admitted as such. To be fair to the factory is they never argued about any of the issues which arose, and they did take our caravan back and did everything in their power to make it exactly the way that we, and to be fair, they would want it to be. Now, having our caravan finished to the standard which both we and the company would like, exactly the way we like it, yes, we do have a very well built, very well finished and very well specified caravan, unlike pretty much any other. So the question now, of course, is to use that wonderful 2020 hindsight to look back and say, was it worth the money we paid? And with that hindsight, would we do this all over again? As a one-off, cashing life savings purchase to see us through the rest of our caravanning years, yes, we would spend £72,000 again to buy this caravan. However, we have noticed that in the last 18 months that the price for the same caravan would now be approximately £90,000. Well, we couldn't afford that anyway, but if we could, would we? I don't honestly know. The main thing is we have got a caravan we want, we're happy with it, and is it for sale? Absolutely not. Thank you for watching and listening this rather exhaustive review. I hope you found it informative and possibly even a little bit interesting. Thanks again.